Like for me to say that I don't know, or I'm struggling, or I'm going through these difficult situations is for me to admit weakness, or that like I'm crumbling and that I fail, that means I failed. No, that's the beginning of success. That's the beginning of embracing who it is that we are versus what it is that we should be or are supposed to be due to what maybe some societal rules or that we perceived or culture that we come from that says that we have to be this perfect image. And it's okay to have this experience. And as a matter of fact, there's the community here to help you get through that experience as we do it alongside you.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. We are your hosts, Bryce III, he, him pronouns.
And Liz McKean, she, her pronouns.
What's up, Liz? How's your energy today?
Well, my energy is one of acceptance.
Acceptance, allowance, you know?
Grace for the process.
Grace for yourself and for the things that you can't control. I mean, is this something that we talk on the show about like what happened?
I think we have to now.
So what exactly, would you be dipping into those energies for at a specific point in time?
So I have, it's funny, it's been a really busy month just in general with primarily work, but also, just life. It's when it rains, it pours kind of thing. So I haven't been doing a really great job of self-care as far as taking care of my, mental health, physical health, and want to get back into that. So this weekend I did a meditation course, which was really cool to be able to do and kind of amp up that practice that always has served me so well. And then this morning I decided, like I told you, that today's gonna be a first day of 40 days straight of meditation in the mornings. So I'd like to have a goal. I'd like to make a commitment. And I was so proud of myself because I sat on my little patio. I live in Florida. So even when it's cool in other parts of the world, I'm so fortunate that it's nice out. And I did my little meditation. I did some breathing. I put some headphones in to listen to a partially guided one and partially just music. And it was great. And I felt so good and centered. And I stood up feeling all proud of myself. Like, man, I have got it together. Like, this is a new chapter. And my husband came out on the patio and said, how you doing? And I was like, I feel great. I feel so centered. And then the case with my AirPods, my little headphones that was in my hand, just leapt from my very hand onto the cement of the patio. And that is not where our story ends, my friends. It then bounced from there off of the patio. I live on the 20th floor, by the way.
20th floor. She is, I've been there. It's high.
It is. It's invigorating. And went all the way down to the patio below, which actually is on the 8th floor. So it only went down 12 floors, 12 stories, not all 20. Bounced there. The headphones went in several directions and the case went into the pool. So my husband and I just looked at each other and looked down at the now very long gone AirPods. And I was like, maybe I'm not quite as centered as I thought I was. But like you said, there's a silver lining. What's the silver lining?
What is the silver lining here?
Nobody was down there. It didn't hit anybody in the head.
Nobody is injured. Nobody has a AirPods size hole in the top of their skull because of the mistake that we made today.
That is right. Yes. I have an AirPod size hole in my heart. But otherwise it's all good. And it just allowed me to practice.
Well, so what it sounds like to me is this is self-compassion in action. Mm-hmm. And even in how we got to this space where you are setting out to do 40 days straight of meditation and showing up for yourself in this different way. What is the motivation behind that? Why is that important to you? And why is self-care or mental health important in general to you?
I mean, that is several questions in one, all of which I have many things to say, you lucky duck.
I'm a lucky
What
duck.
you are. so, so as far as this specific practice, like I said, it's been a busy time, and during busy times, that's when I need personally, and I think a lot of us need that self care and just kind of quiet moments with ourselves the most. It's also when it's the hardest to do. It feels like everything else should come first. I find myself not sleeping well and not, prioritizing sleep. Same thing with how I'm eating, and I'll exercise and move my body and call that my stress release, but not do it super intentionally, which can cause injury. And then just in general, I'm just a little scattered. I have several mental health diagnoses actually, but then just areas that I know that require some just attention to make sure that I'm feeling good and like my best self. Meditation is something that forever and ever, amen, has always been at the bottom of my list of things that I will prioritize in a day that's busy. And every single time I do prioritize it for a extended period of time, it makes everything else feel better. It allows me to drop AirPods down from the 20th floor balcony and have this conversation, and I'm not even sweating, which usually is what would happen and I'd be really anxious about the whole scenario. So it did work, the meditation, just not the way I thought it was going to. And yeah, it's a process. It's all going to be okay. And the fact that I even can say that and mean it and have 15 minutes in the morning where I can be still in my head with my thoughts and have that be a safe place to be is a real victory for my own mental health. So I guess that's where I'm at. Yeah. I know meditation is close to your heart.
Meditation is close to my heart. It has always been a big, you know what? I'm not even, so I was about to do the thing where I go and I grab the thing inside that's like it's like you press play on the tape recorder. It's like, oh, here goes my response. When people say this thing, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna press this thing. And I just started to do that. And in truth, I haven't had the greatest relationship with my practice since I went to the silent meditation retreat around this time last year. I think I dove in super crazy. I never like fasted from words. I had never went to a silent meditation retreat, and I was shown like a new level of practice. And I got back, and what ended up happening was like I didn't continue that level of engagement with my practice. I didn't have that level of engagement with my practice before I went to that silent meditation retreat, but it was kind of like one of those things where I didn't think about it. And then once I went to the retreat, it's like, oh, it goes this deep. It's like, oh, okay. And then when I came back, like there was this extra layer of sensitivity, or maybe it's a sensitivity that had always been there, but I had become desensitized to that sensitivity because of like never having to fast from talking, never having to fast from stimuli. And then when I came back, I kept it up for a while, like how I was at silent meditation retreat. But then I fell off my practice. And really ever since, it's been, maybe I'll get on the horse every 4 or 5 days, and then get like a 4 or 5 day streak, and then I'll fall off again, and then I'll wake up, and some days I wake up, don't even say like today I had to take my mom to the doctor's office for a routine checkup this morning, and my alarm went off. I got out of bed. I didn't pray. I didn't meditate or anything. And I think the reason that I wanted to use today's episode as a container to discuss our personal mental health routines and our relationship with it is because of May. What is May?
May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Mental Health Awareness Month. And what exactly does that mean?
Mental Health Awareness Month, it's been around in the United States since 1949. And NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is, I think, a big part of it. That's when I've looked it up to see where it came from. NAMI is what comes up. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're the ones who started it, but NAMI is an organization that fights stigma, provides support, tries to educate the public, and advocate for policies to support people in the United States affected by mental illness. And they tend to do campaigns around this time. I've had some really nice experiences with them and the supports that they have, but it goes far beyond any single organization. It just is a time to, recognize that this is a area of health that we often don't give as much attention to as maybe we should. And for folks who struggle with it, really in a more intense way than others, it's stigmatized. I think that goes hand in hand in a lot of ways with substance use disorder, in that it's like something that everyone would like to have it be all better because we're all affected by it in some way. But when there's somebody who has, and is having a challenge with one of those things, and it's really big and hard and scary, we can find ourselves turning away. And so having these kind of times where we really recognize it and hold it up to the spotlight, I don't know, I think those are really important. It's really important to me to look at the things that are hard, because there's something that it affects us all, and we all can do something to help.
Yeah. Yeah. I think mental health and substance use disorder or recovery, at least for me, have gone hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health was something I didn't pay attention to. And even if we're talking about like intentional living, my recovery really is synonymous with like showing up on purpose and intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
So, in doing so, when things are going on, when I'm feeling feelings or when I'm having inclinations or, I'm hit with epiphanies, like I got to do something about them. Like now I'm a conscious participant in this experience. And that takes for me to see like, oh, I'm scared when I'm faced with this circumstance, or I have anxiety around my relationship with money, or, I'm anxious about reaching out and asking to be compensated for what it is that I do. Like and when I make these discoveries, like showing up intentionally for myself and creating a space where I can be expressed and I can cultivate wisdom, I can discover that way to show up and have understanding for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that can look like, looking in the face of anxiety. That could look like sitting with anxiety and allowing anxiety to come through and pass and be what it is. That could look like, talking about, why the relationships that I have with life exist as they do right now, which could look like me going back in the past and digging up some of the foundational ways of which I've shown up and the experiences that I've had to figure out how I got to where it is that I am now. And that intentional conscious practice, for one, has led me towards some of these tools as we speak, like meditation, yoga, journaling, amongst other things that allow for me to show up for life on life's terms, and have led me to communities that support me in that process. And I say all of these things because I think all of these things encompass what it means to contribute to our own personal mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an important conversation to have because, believe it or not, and I mean, I could feel like because this is all I talk about and all I've been talking about for the past, coming up on 10 years, that everybody is aware of like these conscious processes. But like, there's still a lot of people who haven't even started this conversation with themselves, or feel like there's a stigma around having that conversation in public. Like for me
Mm-hmm.
to say that I don't know, or I'm struggling, or I'm going through these difficult situations, is for me to admit weakness, or that like I'm crumbling, and that that means I failed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was important for us to have a conversation to kind of kick off this month to say, like, no, that's the beginning of success. Like, that's the beginning of embracing who it is that we are versus what it is that we should be or are supposed to be due to what maybe some societal rules or that we perceived, or culture that we come from, that says that we have to be this perfect image. Like those shoulds, we're shitting on ourselves when in all actuality we're having these experiences, and it's okay to have this experience. And as a matter of fact, there's the community here to help you get through that experience as we do it alongside you, because there's conscious and intentional processing of these things going on in our lives, like in these little spaces. And there's a whole bunch of different spaces where there's different work being done. So it's like a buffet of tools that we can take and apply to our process.
And the more you do, talk about that, the more I feel like others are empowered to talk about it. It's just how we talk about on this podcast, being really public about recovery and substance use disorder is a way that other people can feel like it's okay to come forward, and then suddenly realize that there's this whole community out there that's just got outstretched hands. It's all part of that, of just kind of rejecting any expectation of perfection because it doesn't actually exist. I want to just acknowledge that, what we are talking about so far, as far as mental health and mental health practices, obviously anything that we talk about on this podcast is just our own experiences and our own perspective, which is, us two out of bazillions, and not right or wrong. It just is ours. And when you get into a conversation about mental health, there is the area of, my mental health and meditating to feel more just centered within my own mind. There's also a conversation of actual, diagnoses. Like I said, I have generalized anxiety disorder, which is different than having anxiety about a thing happening is incredibly valid and worth talking about. And also generalized anxiety disorder is something that's different and, sometimes needs more help from medical professionals, medication is sometimes like counseling, things like that. And then there are other areas within the mental health spectrum where, people are dealing with mental illness every day that is just debilitating. And with that, like community is wonderful and talking about it is wonderful. But then there's also real barriers to care, that folks are encountering. So just, we're not the experts to talk about that, I think, in a whole lot of detail, but I just want to acknowledge that we know that this is a much bigger conversation than our practices. And that's just kind of the area that we're landing today, because that's the area that I think we feel the most able to have a conversation around.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things where who do we have on the show recently that said the acronym for HOPE is hearing other people's experiences? And that is I think that is the notion that informs how we show up and share.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm often in spaces where it's like I got to make sure that we know, like, I don't speak for all Black people. I don't speak for all men. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
all I can speak to is the experience that I've had. And I know some of the experience that I've had has been culturally informed, but ultimately, like, we are individuals and we're having an individual experience. And so just continuing to toe that line between the individual experience and the experience as a community. And I think that allows for us to have like compassion and empathy. And maybe you hear some of your story in mine, maybe you hear some of your story in Liz's, or maybe you don't hear your story represented specifically, but you hear some of the tools that you have a relationship with. And I think that is the power of community. I've seen it so many times, especially like with men, where, it takes for like I forgot his name, like Jocko Willink, or and he's this man, this Navy SEAL man, or like it takes for like somebody to see like somebody like that share, like, I struggle. Like, I struggle. I have fear. I have anxiety. Like, I struggle with emotions. And it's like, you know what? And because they shared, now I'll share, and like a problem shared is a problem cut in half. And I think that's internally and a lot of times externally. Like when you share your problems, it's like, oh, this creates a safe container for me to be able to share my problems and the things that I'm going through. And maybe we don't land on a solution. Maybe just this conversation that we're having is the prerequisite for us to have the courage to search and discover what our own personal solution is for us. And maybe that looks like going to therapy. Maybe that looks like going to meetings. Maybe that looks like, reaching out and finding some type of peer program that we can find people that have gone through something similar to us and then engaging in that community. Maybe it looks like cutting on a podcast like this. Maybe it looks like going to Phoenix program, and maybe it looks like gathering somebody's phone number and, picking up that phone and calling somebody when it gets tough, unlike a way that I used to show up where I used to isolate when it got tough, But I think ultimately this is a journey, and similar to Liz's journey, where she dropped the AirPods off the 80th floor in a floor.
This building's getting taller and taller by the moment.
In a Florida apartment building. And the fact that she's able to show up and say, you know what, it's okay. Like, nobody got hurt, and, my AirPods are drying right now, and hopefully they work. And if they don't work, then I go get another case. And to know how much of a stride that was made from maybe how you would have activated previously, and having that compassion and understanding for yourself. I think that's like that's that in action, and to see Liz and to be in community with Liz and to have that example in today, like the container of these 24 hours. Now, after this conversation that we've had, I might go into the day and activate a little differently because I've been brushed up against with like somebody uh, being an example of like compassion for self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you're welcome then for dropping my earpods off the 100th floor. Yeah, no, and it's nice to be able to talk about it and laugh about it, and then also see that it is bigger than just dropping this thing off of the 95th floor. I think the other piece that I think you're describing, and I just want to even talk about more, is giving language, I think, to, ironically, since I couldn't find language for what I was trying to say, giving language to like what we're feeling. I know that there's now there's a lot more conversation out there, and we have the social media and the internet and everything, where you can Google anything, any kind of symptom, and have all sorts of scary things pop up, but sometimes helpful things where you can understand that there is a name for this feeling that I'm having. But I think if you haven't had these conversations or been exposed to this area of like mental health, I know people personally who have had symptoms and things going on within their body and mind that they just have not been able to identify. And then one day in conversation with me, just because it happens to be something I talk about so much, have been like, I think I might be feeling anxiety. Like the thing that's in my body, this might be anxiety. Like, I don't know. I thought something was wrong. I thought maybe I had like a vitamin deficiency or something like that. And it's amazing the power that language has to be able to like, oh, there's something that's happening. That doesn't mean that that's the end of the road. Like there's still more that I could potentially do. But now I know what that is. And I mean, I remember when I first started having panic attacks when I was pretty young, like it was just like, clearly I am going to die in this next few minutes, like there's no other thing that this could be. And when I started to learn about what panic attacks were many years after first experiencing them, it was amazing. I felt less alone, and I also felt less like there was something horribly wrong with me. I still made a few trips to the hospital in future panic attacks. I was like, this is the one. No, this is the one where my heart is for sure exploding. But it changed the course because I knew what to say when something was happening to myself and outside of myself. I had a better idea of maybe what to do next because it had happened before, and within the context of it being something that was a panic attack versus heart attack, I was like, maybe I try taking these deep breaths or whatever other thing had helped me in the past. And that's where these conversations really help me is those little aha moments that happen when we start to have language for what's going on inside of us.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm just going to continue to drill down on like community, because I think community helps to like define that language. Because like you said, I can go on Google and find anything. I'm from 12-step, so there's the text. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I can go and I can read the text and I can go in the crib and just interpret it how I interpret it. But it isn't until like I come and I sit in a group and dissect the text with other people and get other inputs, other points of views, other perceptions of the text that allow for me to like, oh, and get outside of myself and actually give color to the language, like give color to the words. Like I really would say that community plus like the right wording like allows for me to identify things. It's like, oh yeah, that is something that I've experienced. And that can, for somebody like me, like I'm very careful about my language. I'm very careful with how I identify with things. Like I wouldn't like to claim being anxious or like anxiety, like it's just a certain type of way that I show up for myself. And because we can live in a world where there's ands, where things can coexist. And it's cool to know, like, okay, yeah, clinically, like, I've been diagnosed attention deficit. And it's like, oh, now I can see these things in action. And now I can deploy tools that allow for me to show up for that versus like, having an ass kicking machine on. It's like, why I can't do it? Like I'm looking at everybody else and they can just sit down and just tap in and just focus and just like immediately. And it's like, sometimes I feel like, it's squirrel all day and then I'll get 1 hour of like super focus.
Mm-hmm.
And like I beat myself up for it. But like once I got that language and I was able to like, and this is what this diagnosis, like this is what people who suffer from this can experience. It's like, yo, that's exactly what it is that I be going through. And it didn't make me feel like, oh, like I'm hopeless. It made me feel like, oh, where's the community? Then I
Yeah.
went and found a community and, found my flavor of that community. And it's like, oh, like there's a lot of empowering ways that we can show up for this thing. And as a matter of fact, some of the ways that I've had to show up before I had that language, which allowed for me to cope, which allowed for me to show up. Like people see that and it's like, oh, you've already developed tools. Like you've already been putting forth the effort to figure out how you specifically need to show up. And so
Yeah.
you have been hard at work already. And it's like, oh, I didn't even know that. I just thought that this, I thought it was a hack, but it's like, yeah, it was a hack and it is working for you, And so like
Mm-hmm.
try that as well as like, have you tried this? And it's like, oh, okay, cool. And now it helps me to show up in my life more in alignment with what it is that I desire and being less of a victim to these things that I can't even see or don't have the language for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't feel so much like you need to hide it and be ashamed of it and not, not deal with it because you're just so busy trying to not experience it and not let anyone know you're experiencing it.
Yeah. And can I
And
say this real quick? This might be
mhm.
like shifting the topic a little bit, but I don't think it is. Especially for like the older people, like people maybe like 50 and up. Like therapy is not bad. Like you're not a loser or a failure if you seek therapy. Like I don't know what it is. Like the rhetoric sometimes, and I don't want a blanket statement. But there can be a resistance to therapy. Like, oh, going to therapy is admitting that I'm broken. And it's like what I've learned is that, and once again, we are not experts, and nobody has a monopoly on what's right. But like to have a non like to have a neutral party, a person that has been trained in things like acceptance and commitment therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, or like has studied different ways that humans express, and it has studied remedies and tools psychologically and maybe medicine wise, but for me, like specifically psychological tools that allow for us to see these things and give language to these things and shapes to these things, to be able to play with it, to be able to have like a neutral party that is equipped with that, sit with us, somebody that we can resonate with and relate with, like and really discuss our process. Like that's it's been an invaluable process for me.
Mm-hmm.
And Liz, I know you've sought counseling and you've received counseling, and what has like that been like for you? What has that process been like for you? Has it been easy? Has it been linear?
Well, no and no. um, yeah, I think the first time I sought out therapy I was in college, and that's when my panic attacks had started to get really debilitating. And I remember bringing up panic attacks and wanting therapy and wanting to see a doctor. And my parents, who by the way are wonderful and in full support of every kind of help I ever could need, at that time it was a really scary idea to them. Like that's like is it that bad? Like what could be so bad that we would need to go and get like therapy and potentially medicine and things like that. It was a really scary unknown world. I pressed it until I got that. I got the ability to go and talk to somebody. And then I remember I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to have therapy or be a patient. I honestly didn't go very long because I was so afraid that if I told this person anything that was really happening in my head, she wouldn't like me, that I wasn't getting anything out of it. And then over the years, as I had more experiences within therapy, I found people who I connected with a little differently, who were able to like create a space for me that I felt safe sharing. I got to the point in my therapy journey over the years. I've had many a wonderful counselor where I could say to them like, listen, I'm really going to want you to like me, and the moment I'm worrying about that too much is the moment you're going to stop being able to help me. So I just want to tell you that now. And I've had wonderful people tell me like that's a really normal thing and that's fine. And either I've had people say, I like you no matter what. I've had people say, it doesn't matter if I like you. And I've had people say other things that I've been like, I don't think this is the right fit. Because that's the other piece that I didn't know when I first started out, is that you don't have to stick with a person who doesn't feel connected to you. And they're people too. I've had people who I've gone to for years and then gotten to a point where I'm like, I think our journey is over and thank you so much. And here's a gift and a card. And I'm so grateful for everything you've done and let me move on. And then had other therapists since then. So it's like linear could not be further than the truth. And also easy, no, because it's work, you do have to go and speak, and you have to be honest and trust, trust yourself and trust the person that you're talking to. And through all that, it's so worth it. I wouldn't be the person I was if it wasn't for all of those experiences.
Yeah. And I mean, I think to somebody, so that it's worth it, is a few words, right? But there's somebody listening and it's like, yo, this sounds like, dating. And it sounds like I already got enough going on. That's why I'm even in this point where I think I might need therapy, or maybe therapy is an option. And it just sounds like an extra added thing in my life. Like, why is that worth it? Why is it worth it for me to pursue that if it's that much work, potentially?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like one of the, I'm not sure if this is what if you were hoping I would make it sound easier, because I definitely see the value in that, in taking away some of those barriers. And it is whatever you make it, and it's as personal as you and your journey. To sit down with someone for an hour, whether it's virtually or in person, and to just have them say, so what's up? Like, how you feeling? And then just talk. Like, that in itself is such a gift, to just be able to say, somebody who's not your mom, who's not your friend, who's not your partner, to just be able to say, these are the things that happened. And this stupid thing happened at work and I'm so mad. And I did this. I dropped my AirPods off of the patio and oh my gosh, how am I in my 40s and still do things like this? And I think my husband's mad at me about it. And I just can't think, I'm not going to be able to sleep for 3 nights, and have somebody just listen and maybe nod a little bit. And then afterwards, maybe just help me to take a deep breath and exhale and remind me that, like, I'm not the only one who makes mistakes. And let's talk about areas that maybe are feeling good right now. And then to walk out of there without any kind of miracle cure. There's nothing that's changed outwardly, but I took a breath and I was able to say those things to somebody who, again, is completely neutral. If you just went to one appointment and got to have that experience, I mean, what a gift. Like, your whole day changes. Maybe you'll sleep at night. Maybe I'll sleep at night, There's more to it, if you're, depending on what the goals are, for the long term, if you're, if you're looking for something like big, but as far as just there's some immediate benefits when it comes to that, to just be able to be. Nothing expected of you except for be exactly as you are, and maybe say it out loud.
Yeah, mental health is, I believe, an essential conversation. And I'm glad that there's an entire month dedicated to it. And I'm also glad that it's not contained to a month. And I'm super glad that it's almost at the forefront of the culture these days. And I'm super glad to be with an organization, the Phoenix, that is a community with tons of people doing tons of work on their own mental health. And I'm just super grateful. I'm super grateful for you. And I'm just super grateful for my communities and the different groups I'm surrounded by, because focusing on these things, this internal world, has allowed for me to have eyes that view the external world in a way that supports me versus is against me. And even in the midst of fear, I can show up and be an active participant in life, especially when things are scary. And I don't have to run, and I don't always have to make sense of it. And essentially, I could just be me. And I know for a long time, that wasn't the case. Like, I had to manipulate myself to be something other than what it was that I was showing up as in this moment. And I'm just super grateful. I'm humbled that I live in the world that is supportive of me being me.
Well, I couldn't be more grateful for you being you, because I learn from you every day. My mental health is better. Gosh, over the weekend, I know I was in a little bit of a chaotic space, and you called about something, I think even podcast related. And it just helped so much to have somebody that just knew me and that I could just talk to, even if it wasn't even about what was going on. It's just beautiful to be in a space and to be in community with people who just accept you exactly as you are in your moments of peace and in your moments of chaos.
Yeah.
That's what we got
Yeah,
here.
definitely. And also, me calling you did something for me. It allowed me to process some things that I was experiencing, and just hearing your voice in general uh, allows me to know, like, oh, I'm not alone in this journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that being said, I think for today's episode, as we close it out, I want to give you all listening a meaningful call to action. I challenge you to pick up the phone and call somebody. Maybe somebody that you talk to on a regular basis, or maybe somebody that you haven't talked to in a while, and just remind them, give them that reminder that you're there for them. Like, I don't care for what, I don't care like what the context is. Just know that I'm here for you, and I'm always here for the long answer when I ask how you're doing. Because a lot of times we can feel like, we move in a day so quick, and, even, hey, how are you? On the street, it's just like, I'm supposed to say I'm fine. So, hey, I'm good. Yeah, cool. How are you? I'm good. I'm cool. And I have the privilege to have friends that I can take. Like last night, I was talking to my friend Mila, and she asked how was I, and I went in, and I was, maybe to anybody else it would have been awkward, but it was a good 120 seconds before I came back. Like, I'm good, but like I actually went in and like observed and investigated. Is there anything that in this moment, in this space that's being provided me, that I want to pull out and I want to work through with this person who's allowing this space for me? And I feel like everybody deserves to know that exists for them. So if you can pick up that phone, call that person, you can text that person, let them know I'm always here for the long answer when I ask you how are you, because that's how we continue to create community.
A beautiful call to action. And if you're still in a space where you're just trying to get through the next 10 minutes without, picking up a drink or a drug or something like that, maybe you call somebody and just say, hey, I'm not okay. That's the other piece of it. Like, it's okay to be the one, reaching out, offering help. It's always, always okay to be the one reaching out saying, hey, I need some help and I don't really understand what I'm feeling right now. And I don't think I can do it by myself, because that's where community can really just be everything. Everything. Get you through the next day.
Just to speak to that real quick. Also, if whoever it is you reach out to like doesn't have the time or the capacity to hold that, I don't trip. I don't feel like, oh, well, nobody, because I've had that experience where it's like in that moment of desperation, it's like, okay, I'm finally just ready to just tell somebody that I really need help. And then I reach out to that person, and that person's going through their own thing, and they don't have the time or the space or the capacity to hold that. And I'm like, see, I knew it the whole time. I wasn't going to reveal myself to anybody, and I need help. And I finally did it. And they shut me down. And like, nobody is ever there for me, ever. That's not, it may feel like that. And I understand why it may feel like that. But I promise you, that's not the case. People, place, and things, everybody is going through their own thing. Everybody is doing the best they can with what they've been given. So, allowing compassion for others as we allow compassion for ourselves. And I know it may be tough. It may have been tough to reach out to that one person, but try somebody else. And if they don't have the capacity, try somebody else and keep trying. And eventually you'll find that person that's like, yo, yeah, okay, what's going on? All right, let's go get some coffee or give me the long answer. Like, I'm here for it.
We also will post in the show notes here, which we do in some, but not all episodes. But if you don't see it in one, definitely look back at others. Resources that you can call if you are in immediate need of help, if you are in crisis and need to help. NAMI being one of them. There's a lot of helplines out there for those moments where it's an emergency, because mental health is health, and if there's an emergency, it's real and it's valid, and you deserve to get help. And because of that, there are entire organizations and systems and communities and helplines that are available for you. So we'll have those posted. Being there for people is like an incredibly strong, courageous, just loving thing. And reaching out for help is all those things too. So whichever point you're at any point, we're just so glad that you're here today. And as always, we are not the experts on anything except for our own experiences, and to be the folks on the microphone is a great honor. And also, it's everything that's going on in your world and in your community is just as valid, and we wouldn't be able to do this without you.
And so, if you would mind, share this episode with somebody. Let's spread this energy. Pop on your podcast app and leave a rating and review for this podcast. If this episode or any of our other episodes have ever done anything for you, that allows for the discoverability of our podcast to increase. And so the more people can get this energy, the better. And that really helps if you leave a rating or a review on your podcast app.
Sure does. Yeah. And if this is your first episode you're ever listening to, we often have additional voices on here than ours. So check out other episodes too. Our guests are some of the most brilliant people that I've ever been so lucky to talk to.
And with all that said, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. And we'll catch you on the next episode of Rise, Recover, Live.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you, or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.